Thank you very much, Dr. Sajita, for the very kind introduction. Let me begin by sharing my slides. Great, and good morning to all of you who have taken time off this Saturday to be here with us. I encourage you to make this session yours, and I look forward very much to the discussion that we're going to have. I would like to really express my gratitude to Dr. Sajita, VMFT, as well as Guru from IT for Change for this invitation. I will share with you some of my thoughts as well as some of my work regarding generative AI in the classroom. I will bring in examples from what I know in terms of how the Ministry of Education, in fact, the whole of the government in Singapore has responded to generative AI. And I will share with you some examples from the classroom as well. I love to hear your thoughts and please feel free to put in your comments in the chat and we can have a time of discussion later on. I'd like to first state that I am not a computer scientist. I'm an educator. I'm a literacy researcher. I'm a teacher at heart. So why am I talking about generative AI? I really like what Dr. Sajita mentioned just now about how the narrative should be shaped by educators, teachers, researchers in the front line involved in education. I remember speaking to someone that I deeply respected. He's very senior in years, in his late 80s, who have seen through the different educational technology tools that have come in the last few decades, the internet, social media, and generative AI. And he told me that, no, Victor, generative AI is going to be the game changer. It will change the way we think about teaching, learning, and assessment. So I'll spend the time talking about some of my thoughts and some of the ideas related to this aspect. November 2022, when generative AI in the form of ChatGPT was first made available to the public, there was a lot of interest, there was a lot of concern amongst teachers, especially English teachers, about the impact of generative AI in the classroom. During them, I was vacationing in Switzerland. And in December, I decided to write a commentary to the Singapore newspaper, the Straits Times, on some of my thoughts with regard to ChatGPT. Now, obviously, it's too small for you to read what I have written here. But I've, of course, asked ChatGPT to summarize it for you. Now, you may say that, oh, there are just too many paragraphs here for us to read as well. Well, I understand that, and I've asked ChatGPT to further summarize it for you. Essentially, I asked questions about assessment. I asked also questions about the importance of critical thinking in today's day and age. But you may say that, I think this does not do full justice to the commentary that you have written. Well, I have asked ChatGPT to rework it in a matter of seconds into a sonnet that can make it a little bit more interesting to read. But for those of you who do not like a sonnet, maybe a haiku can sum up the crux of the article. So this, as I'm sure many of you have realized by now, is the ability of generative AI, of ChatGPT, to be able to give succinct summary, not just in the typical texture form, but in various formats that you like it. You can get it to write poetry for you if you like. And it addresses the crux of the article fairly well. And with the possibilities, the potential of generative AI in doing some of this creative work that we have valued, writing poetry, for instance, what does it mean for us to be creative today? And with the ability for us to have generative AI summarize articles, long journal papers, if you like, into a few lines, in a few paragraphs, does ChatGPT make us lazy? Well, this is just ChatGPT. What about the affordances of generative AI to create images? Well, some of you may be familiar with Midjourney. It's a computer program in which you are able to enter some phrases, some prompts, and create images. I thought because I'm from Singapore and perhaps not many of you are familiar with Singapore, I asked generative AI, well, Midjourney really, to create an image of Singapore, right? And this is what he has created. I thought about this for a while. And I said, but is this really the Singapore that I know? Why did Midjourney choose to represent these images as Singapore? What is the Singapore that I know? Well, this is the Singapore that I know. 80% of us stay in high-rise public housing flats. When I look out of the window, this is the scene that I see, not the one that I saw earlier on. And that gave me some thoughts about the agency and choice in which generative AI offers as we put in prompts to get them create images for us. And I wonder about the potential biasness involved in some of the choices that they offer. So for instance, I asked a few more questions of Midjourney. I said, create an image of a professor. Well, I think some people in the room may feel a little disappointed. Some of us have PhDs, some of us are professors, but we don't really fit very much into the stereotypical image of a white male professor. For the ladies, don't be discouraged. I asked ChatGPT or Midjourney to create an image of a teacher. Stereotypes. To create an image of a doctor, females are not represented. And again, to create an image of a nurse, you see women being represented. And these are the kind of biasness that are present in the databases, in the algorithms that is being used to generate images from the prompts, from the very innocuous prompts that we have put in. And apart from images, obviously we know that the capabilities of generative AIs has advanced to the creation of videos as well. So from getting generative AI to be able to create poetry for us, to very professionally looking images, to very high quality videos, these are some of the affordances and possibilities that Gen AI can offer. And this can be done in a matter of seconds, literally. So in light of these new affordances, the question that we should think about as educators, as teachers, as education researchers really is, what does it mean to be literate today? And obviously, what I've highlighted through my example just now is also the importance of recognizing that what generative AI produces may be perpetuating various stereotypical ideas of gender or roles of various people groups as well. It is obvious from the examples that I've shown you, it's also obvious that you can see that they are reinforcing various problematic hegemonic values. And this is not really new in a sense. Even before generative AI, organizations like UNESCO have warned us about has warned us to be aware of algorithmic biasness when making semiotic choices in composing, recognizing that there are certain biasness that may be inherent in large language models that we use. Now, very quickly, I'm just going to give you a sense for those of you who may not be familiar about what generative AI is, but I suspect I'm really preaching to the choir here because I know all of you have either dabbled with generative AI or know of someone that have done so. Now, we are familiar with regular AI. If you have gone to Amazon to do shopping before and you see personalized recommendations made for you based on your previous purchases, if you have used your face to unlock your handphone, well, these are essentially the use of regular AI. Supervised machine learning, where human trains the machine to correctly label sources in binary data, or unsupervised machine learning, where machines ask humans to label statistical regularities. Some researchers have described this as curation AI. Now, generative AI is another kettle of fish altogether. It requires training with massive data set processed through a multitude of parameters, but the result it generates are unpredictable and always uniquely reconstituted digital artifacts, as we have seen text, image, sound, or videos as well. And some researchers have described this as creation AI. But let's take a step back and think about the genesis and development of AI. The term artificial intelligence was coined by John McCarthy for a small workshop held at Dartmouth College, really way back in the 1950s. McCarthy defined artificial intelligence as making a machine behave in ways that would be called intelligent if a human was so behaving. And some of you may be familiar with Alan Turing, who said that computers might be able to achieve something like this, but only as a trick. So the question that we need to think about as researchers, as educators, is whether we have been tricked to think that machines are intelligent because it's exceedingly good in calculation, in operating through figures and statistics. Maybe we are giving it more credit than it deserves by using the word intelligence, and we need to think and unpack what thinking and intelligence really is. Now, what are the perils of treating machines as intelligent? There are 4 dimensions that we can think about as how machines may not really be intelligent in that regard. The first is the epistemological lens, because machines don't have a theory of knowledge. They are incapable of reflexivity. They're unable to reflect on the kind of choices and decisions. You can't accuse a machine of being biased or stereotypical because it's unable to reflect on the choices that it offers. The next dimension is emotional. There's no theory of mind. A machine is unable to understand others. It can pretend to understand someone, but it can't really understand others, the emotional states that they have. Another dimension to consider is the ethical dimension. The machine, the generative AI, do not have values beyond what you have programmed in the algorithm. And obviously, the 4th dimension is existential. It has no purpose beyond what we can use it for. But it itself cannot be a free and responsible agent and take responsibility for the work that it creates. Now, ChatGPT is something that's familiar to all of us, and ChatGPT on the website has listed a number of limitations that, in a sense, are disclaimer for what it cannot do, right? So some of you are familiar that it uses, it tends to be exceedingly verbose. It tends to use certain phrases. It tends to hallucinate when it does not know the answer, and when you press it to do so. So there are certain limitations that are really reported in ChatGPT, and it's made known to everybody who uses it. In a work that Bill Cook and Mary Calantis, 2 leading scholars in the field of education, talk about, they reflected on how the use of ChatGPT can potentially be harmful for learning. Well, they argue that the machine buries its sources. You don't really have a sense of the large language model that it draws on to provide responses to you. The software in itself is a black box by design. Facts, the machine cannot have any notion of empirical truth. It doesn't really know what is truthful or what are factual. It harvests ostensible facts that are found in their textual source, but it won't be able to verify them. Theory, as I mentioned, the machine do not have a conception of a theoretical frame or disciplinary practice. They have been described as stochastic parrots, really, just regurgitating what they have copied from a mismatch of textual sources. Ethics, well, if the machine responds to you in a very polite manner, it's because it has been programmed to do so, right? The moral frames of human imposed filters is not visible. And of course, ChatGPT, learning from the lessons of Tay, some of you may know Microsoft Tay, that turned into a racist xenophobe in a matter of a few hours interacting with humans. ChatGPT has been programmed to be uncritically affirmative. And if you challenge ChatGPT, it apologizes to you. It pretends to be human, feign anthropomorphism. So in light of all these concerns and issues with regard to generative AI, what should our educators and teachers' response be then? Am I suggesting to you that we should then ignore it altogether? Or shall we resist the use of Gen AI in the classroom? This may be familiar to some of us. 1988, math teacher protests against calculator use. And today, of course, some teachers protest against ChatGPT use. One thing for sure is that even if the teachers and educators, university professors are not using it, your students are. So there's no use in just putting your head in the sand and hoping that it will go away or just ignore the developments of Gen AI because it has a real impact on the way we teach, more importantly, on how students learn and how we assess. And Gen AI is embedded in all the mobile devices that we are using. In Apple, in Microsoft, in Chrome, they are going to be integral, even without you subscribing explicitly to a ChatGPT account, OpenAI account. When you use computer, a mobile device, you are using Gen AI. So there's no running. Some organizations like the Khan Academy have embraced it, right? And very early on, they use it in Camingo, their platform. And the teachers say that, well, the students are asking more questions than they typically ask aloud. And of course, you can read out a little bit more about that. I have a master's student who came to me and said that she wants to do a systematic review of Gen AI in literacy education, in language learning. I smiled and I told her that systematic reviews are usually done when there's sufficient papers published over a period of time, like 10 years, so that it can be meaningful. Usually we need at least 30 to 40 papers to be able to say that we are able to look at certain trends from the systematic review. She proved me wrong. She showed me that in the span of 2.5 years, there were already 42 high-quality publications that have been published by researchers around the world on generative AI. And they have shown how the use of generative AI can enhance students' writing performance in classroom, improve reading comprehension, make students more motivated for language learner, and while the impact on speaking and listening skills are inconsistent, the systematic review have highlighted studies that shown how generative AI can be used well in the classroom. Obviously, we also recognize, and not just us, but from the studies that we have reviewed, the importance that Gen AI should complement teacher-led instruction rather than to be used independently. So the importance of Gen AI to foster digital literacies has also come to the forefront. Now, if you're interested in this open access article, you can scan the QR code and you can read it for yourself. And I welcome you to reach out to me if you have questions or thoughts as well. And in light of this, organizations like the International Baccalaureate have allowed ChatGPT to be used in their essays. In a Singapore context, our education minister, Mr. Chan Chun Seng, says that, well, students, teachers will have to learn to properly use tools like ChatGPT. So it's a very strong signal coming from the top. AI tools, ChatGPT could be useful in classroom, but obviously there are certain levels of learning, fundamentals of learning that students need to master, and then think about the affordances of ChatGPT that can be used. And we have tried the use of various AI tools over the years, but now with Gen AI, there was a firm commitment, and this is another newspaper report about how the Ministry of Education is going to deploy more AI tools in schools. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. I will focus on the master plan that we have recently announced, the EdTech Plan 2030. And I'm going to share with you how, as a system, the Singapore government, the Ministry of Education, is responding to the opportunities as well as the challenges that Gen AI offer. But first, very quickly, a little bit about Singapore so that you can put everything I share in certain contexts. Unlike India, of course, which is a magnificent and big country, Singapore is a very small country. Population only 5.9 million, I think smaller than a city that you have in India. This is the key education statistics. But our government is very invested in education, and we have pumped in about 9.75 billion US dollars every year for education expenditure. Over the years, the Singapore education system has evolved. It started from a survival-driven education focus, we only got our independence in Singapore in 1965, and the focus then was industrialization. And then we moved to efficiency driven because we wanted to be a factory for the world. And then we focused a fair bit on skills and capital intensive related industries. Later on, the focus was on ability-based and aspiration-driven education as we aspire to be a knowledge-based economy. And today, of course, the buzzword is really about innovation-driven. And in our education system, there's a strong focus on student-centric, values-driven education. The EdTech master plan that we had did not just start 2 years ago. We started in 1997, where the focus was on laying the foundation and introducing computers into the classroom. In the second master plan, we moved on to talk about the importance of using computers well for teaching and learning. We had a third and fourth master plan that built on the earlier master plans that focus on how we can use technology to enhance and deepen learning, but also to develop what we call 21st century competencies, like being able to be critical thinkers, to be good communicators, to be able to collaborate with others well. We had the EdTech plan, which laid the foundation for the EdTech Master Plan 2030, which I'm going to share with you today. And the EdTech 2030 Master Plan was focused on the opportunities and challenges that Gen AI offer to us. So what does it look like? Well, it's about transforming education through technology. And the vision, if you can see below, really is to prepare students for the technology transformed world. We have 4 outcome goals in our EdTech Master Plan. Students being digitally empowered, future-ready learners and innovators. Teachers who are important because they are at the front line of the classroom to be technologically adept, collaborative learning designers. Schools to be intelligent, responsive, and digitally equipped learning environment. And of course, at a systemic level, there is a network EdTech ecosystem. For each of the outcome goal, we have specific focuses as well. So for students in particular, we wanted them to be digitally empowered 21st century learners, digitally literate learners who are able to apply the technological skills to distill and discern the use of technology, as well as empathetic and technologically adept innovators who are able to use a range of digital tools for their own solutions. And these are for teachers to become collaborative collaborators or contributors, pedagogically proficient, data literate learning designers, as well as learners and innovators that constantly develop and deepen their digital literacies and technological skills. For schools, the focus is on having flexible multifunctional learning spaces, as well as digitally connected learning spaces that can support anytime, anywhere learning. At the system level, there's a focus on enhanced public-private partnership, working with industries, private sectors, as well as universities to develop and scale EdTech practices, to plug into the international EdTech network, as well as working with parents as key partners. So these are the outcome goals that we have. Now, the question is, how then do we achieve these outcome goals? There are 2 aspects. The first is the focus on strategic trust. And we have 5 strategic trusts. I'm going to take about 5 to 10 minutes to share with you the strategic trust in detail so that you have a sense of what they look like. The first strategic trust is on customization of students' learning. And this is what we have done. We have developed a learning platform called the Singapore Student Learning Space that is accessible to all teachers and students across primary and secondary school. So it's a learning management platform, and there are AI-enabled tools that is built into the platform. The learning platform called the SLS also have a rich variety of learning resources that is curriculum aligned and that is developed as well as curated by our curriculum designers at the Ministry of Education. And this learning platform have digital tools such as learning feedback assistant to support students in using Gen AI to get feedback on their writing, right? So this is how it looks like, the Singapore Student Learning Space, where students will log in. Now, AI in SLS, artificial intelligence in SLS, is a key focus, and there are a range of different tools that have been developed. Adaptive learning system, feedback assistant for math, language feedback for English, short answer feedback as well. So this is how it looks like, adaptive learning system. I have a video, but I'm not going to show it now. If there's interest, we can take a look later on how the adaptive learning pathway look like to offer timely feedback for students' learning of mathematics. And they do it by providing differentiation, self-directed learning, and monitoring the students' progress, because there's a dashboard that will tell students how well they're doing and what are the issues that they have. Now, this is not highly innovative, because I know that there are many learning management systems that are already doing this. But what is unique in a Singapore context is that we have one single platform that brings together all these tools. They are both curated and developed by our curriculum planners in the ministry. This is the feedback assistant for mathematics, and they would guide students by providing line-by-line hints and feedback whenever they have struggle with answering the question. They redirect time to other learning activities where students then can build on their own areas of strengths or develop competencies in areas of weaknesses as well. And we have a language feedback for English learning as well, because basic grammar can be easily identified, and curriculum-aligned feedback can be given to them in their writing. So as students operate and work through the student learning space, they have access to the whole range of different tools. Short answer feedback assistant allows auto-generated content feedback for students' answers. So rather than the teachers having to mark every single student answer, the answers of the students can be provided. And if you're interested, we can take a look at the video later on as well.
10 more minutes.
Sure. Okay, good.
Yeah.
And I'm going on strategic trust too, right? And this is about developing and strengthening students' digital literacy. Because even as we bring in the use of these AI tools in the SLS, we want to help students to be able to be digitally literate. We have a framework, and we want to call the find, think, apply, and create framework that I will share with you. And I will also share with you how we try to strengthen the cyber wellness education that we have. So this is the framework that we have, a digital literacy framework. Find, think, apply, and create, getting them to be able to evaluate information, think about the data to analyze them well, apply various tools and software to create things so that they are able then to use it to represent their ideas, their experiences, their identity. So this is the framework to develop digital literacies among students. And of course, there is a focus on providing AI literacy to help students to understand what AI is, given that it's so new and pertinent. Think about the benefits and limitations and risks. So what we do on the SLS again is to offer learning that is self-directed for the students, so they can choose to learn AI literacy on their own, so that they're able to develop a basic understanding of the tools they're using. The third strategic trust is about empowering students to develop 21st century competencies. And this is about essentially getting students to be involved in a whole range of the use of digital tools like digital making. To some of you may have heard of the maker spaces, where we get our students to try out using digital tools like 3D printers to create various artifacts so that they can see the value of digital tools in their learning. And of course, our 21st century competencies is embedded in the curriculum as well. Fourth strategic trust is about the school and department culture of collaboration and encouraging students and teachers in sharing the kind of learning that they have. Teachers especially are encouraged to develop e-pedagogies so that they are able to know how to use technology well. And this relates to the fifth strategic trust, which is on the teachers' use of EdTech practices. So I'm at the National Institute of Education, where we have pre-service training to support our teachers' learning of how to use and design meaningful learning experiences with digital technologies. But there's also a fair bit of resources and professional development for teachers to continually learn about better ways of using technology in the classroom. We have identified schools that have become center of teaching and learning excellence, and where they are able then to host different ones to come together to learn as well. So these are some of the key aspects in terms of the strategic trust. Now, the enablers that I want to highlight essentially is how MOE provides support at the system level to enable the implementation of the strategic trust. There are three enablers. The first is learning analytics and data. And essentially, it's about providing professional development opportunities for schools in the use of learning data. The second is about infrastructure support and processes, and it's about providing resources to help schools to rethink the kind of classrooms, learning spaces, libraries that can better support the kind of 21st century digital learning. The third, as I mentioned, is about networking. PPP, private-public partnership, is something that we pay a lot of attention to, and also the sharing of teachers' resources through communities of practices. So in a sense, it works together with a whole range of different enablers to support the kind of strategic trust that we have. The whole of government, of course, is also launching what they call Launchpad, which is a generative AI platform, so that some of the more confidential and official documents can be used, not with ChatGPT, but in Launchpad, so that we are able to harness generative AI in the work that we do in the civil service, but at the same time, keep the kind of information safe from other companies like OpenAI. So we have developed our own Gen AI, if you like, to encourage civil servants, the ministry, to use that. Now, I want to very quickly also talk about the affordances of Gen AI that we have looked at earlier on. And I want you to think about this. When we talk about the value of Gen AI for feedback assistant, now, this is a new tool that we have in the learning platform. The question is, how does it help us provide the feedback? I'm going to give you a little quiz. This is an example of a composition that a 13-year-old has written. I want you to take a look at the two feedback, and I want you to guess which feedback is provided by the teacher and which feedback is provided by Gen AI. You don't have to read it carefully. You can just look at it quickly. And so this is the first feedback. I want you to think whether it is from the teacher or is it from Gen AI. This is the second feedback. I want you to think whether it's from the teacher or is it from Gen AI. So in the room, you can raise up your hand. How many of you think that this is from the teacher? How many of you think that this is from Gen AI? Okay. What about this? How many of you think that this is from the teacher? And how many of you think that this is from Gen AI? I want you to let you know that all of you are correct. They are all from Gen AI. Black and Williams in Assessment for Learning talks about the features of good feedback, that it should be timely, it should be specific, it should be descriptive, it should be actionable, it should be constructive. Many of us who are teachers in a room would struggle to offer timely feedback because it takes a while for us to mark the composition. Specific feedback takes a lot of time as well, especially descriptive feedback. It takes a while to write the feedback for each child. But now Gen AI is able to offer very good feedback on the kind of compositions for students. We did another study where we got a teacher and Gen AI to offer feedback on the same piece of composition. The one you see on the left is the feedback that's offered by the teacher. And the one that you see on your right is the feedback that's offered by ChatGPT. You will find that they are comparable. In fact, some may feel that the feedback by ChatGPT may be stronger. So the question for us to think about when we are giving feedback for learning are some of these aspects of whether it can be timely, it can be for language and content, criterion-based, personalized, detailed, age-appropriate, and interactive. And Without the use of Gen AI tools, it can be really challenging. But Gen AI tools have allowed us to be able to do that as a support, as a tool for the teacher to use to provide feedback for the students. Now, I'm going to share with you in the last part of this particular session about how Singapore teachers have been using Gen AI tools on their own in a community called the Singapore Learning Designer Circus. This is the Facebook community where they share with each other how they have used Gen AI tools as well as other tech tools to design lessons. Here is an example of a teacher sharing how they have used ChatGPT to craft a game story for a primary 3 science lesson. So they use a ChatGPT to develop a storyline and put it up on a student learning space. And then they share it with one another on the community. This is another example of a teacher using ChatGPT to develop a mathematics lesson. And when they share it with the community, other teachers from other schools can just adopt and adapt the kind of lessons that have been created. Here is a teacher that used ChatGPT to create an escape room so that students can learn mathematics, how to solve quadratic equation by factorization. And the teacher even provided a reflection on how they have used ChatGPT to design the storyline. Images are created by Midjourney. And there's a lot more examples. Now, in a study that I did with teachers in Singapore, we interviewed 3 pre-service teachers across 3 different educational contexts, 2 from Europe and 1 in Asia, to think about what are their perceptions about the use of Gen AI. Well, we found that there was a complex interplay between internal and external factors, but one of the key factors that will help them to be more motivated in the use of Gen AI in their own classroom is their own first-hand experiences with Gen AI themselves. If you're interested in how Gen AI can be used in teaching and learning, there's a fair bit of ideas that have been offered by Mike Sharpers, a professor of educational technology. He had this publication called Innovative Pedagogies that is very influential, where he talk about what are some new ways and exciting ways that teaching and learning can look like. And with Gen AI, he crowdsourced for ideas of how Gen AI can, well, in a sense, realize some of these innovative pedagogies. So these are some of the roles that he offered, and he offered examples how Gen AI can be used to actualize the innovative pedagogies that he has talked about. Now, if you're interested, he has published a very useful article, I thought, on the value of Gen AI. It's important for us to reflect on the ethics in using AI as well. I talk about how IB have allowed the use of ChatGPT and AI in assessment. It will not ban AI software. It should be aligned to academic integrity policy. And a lot of the universities have also come up with guidelines for the use of AI in education and assessment. I just want to say that even in the Ministry of Education, we have an AI in education ethics framework that focus on agency, inclusivity, fairness, and safety amongst our teachers. But what Gen AI offers really is an opportunity for us to rethink assessment. So rather than just focusing on potential plagiarism, cheating cases, we may have to think about what it means to really recognize students' learning in the age of generative AI. I showed you earlier on that ChatGPT has allowed is allowed in IB essays. But in the same article, it is also stated that essay writing is being challenged by the rise of technology, and there's no doubt they will have much less prominence in the future. I'm going to conclude by reflecting on some of the things that I've shared so far, and I invite you to share your thoughts with me in the discussion. The first is to recognize that while we are all interested and attracted by ChatGPT and Gemini, they are just a snapshot of what AI in education can offer for now. It's going to get more powerful, it's going to get more pervasive, and it's going to be a part of our life that we cannot ignore. And therefore, we need to recognize and think about how we can deal and work with it in the context of teaching, learning, and assessment. So education system, educators, and teachers in the classroom must each take responsibility and shape the narrative of AI in education. We need to understand how people are using and perceiving Gen AI. Even if you are not using as an educator, as I mentioned, your students are, and that affects the way they learn. So we need to think about the ethical considerations in the use of AI for education, but more importantly, it's the big question that we need to address, which I started at the beginning of the session. What does it mean for us to be literate in the digital age? All right, my time is up. If you're interested in some of my further thoughts on this, you can check out an interview that I did with a group of colleagues in Brazil. The QR code is there. You can think about this. This is a bit tiered towards the academic audience, but if you're interested in some thoughts related to this, read it, and I'll be very interested to hear your thoughts. So feel free to email me, and I'd love to hear some of your feedback and questions from today's session. Thank you very much.